Hi, my name is Bill Hamilton, and this is an excerpt from my new book, Would You Do What They Did? Great Christian Leaders from Our Past. Epworth. Susannah lay in the bed of the rectory surrounded by two of her oldest daughters. She felt comfortable except for her cheeks, which were warm with fever. Her oldest daughter looked very innocent as she lay asleep in a rocking chair by the bed, her face hidden by a tumble of hair. Her second eldest daughter sat at the foot of the bed. Her long brown hair flowed over a few of the freckles on her cheek. She asked, "Can I get you anything, Mom?" Susannah barely turned her head and said, "No, thank you. I don't need anything." A small candle flickered in the room. Shadows moved across the simple furnishings. Thunder sounded, and the oldest daughter was startled awake and let out a small scream. The other daughter laughed at her. Susannah sat up and said, "Don't laugh at your sister." The cold constantly crept into the room from the outside winter air. The 3 stories house's thin wall and straw roof didn't protect them well from the cold. The bitter air snuck in through the cracks and carried with it the smell of dank dreariness common in rainstorms. After a few minutes another smell crept silently into the bedroom. It smelled like the smell of leaves burning in the distance. A scream shook the household, and Susannah jumped out of bed, her illness forgotten. She yelled, "That's Hetty!" The 2 daughters jumped up, their eyes bouncing back and forth, trying to figure out what to do. From the street below, voices called out, "Fire! Fire!" The smoky smell grew stronger and it burned their eyes. Susannah heard someone go from her husband's bedroom next door. Soon her husband, Samuel, entered the room, his tall form filling the entryway and his strong face covered in shadow. He said, "We need to get all the children out. The house is on fire." Susannah went into the hall and saw Hetty covered with ashes. Her hands went to cover her mouth in her shock, but she didn't hesitate long before acting. Susannah and Samuel helped her down the stairs. The smoke grew thicker, and when they reached the bottom of the stairs, Samuel went to the nursery to get the 5 children there and the maid. Susannah thought of her son John, who had slept in the attic. She ran upstairs while her husband was waking the children. "John!" she yelled, and ran down the hall. Smoke obscured her vision and flames licked the walls. She could only make out 5 feet in front of her. She ran up the stairs and opened the door to the attic. The fire burned intensely everywhere she looked. The path to where John stood was an inferno. Some of the planks off the floor had already given way. Her heart collapsed, but she knew that she had to gather her strength to help out the rest of her family. She ran back down the stairs and tried the door to the study. Her husband's valuable books and writings were safeguarded there. The door was locked. She went downstairs, but the fire burned there much worse. The front door was open, so she tried to go through it, but a gust of wind, driven by the intense heat, blew a sheet of smoke and flames at her. She tried again, but the fire attacked her in a wave of painful heat. Susannah tried to get a running start, but this only caused her to be thrown on the floor by the force of the flames. While on the floor, she knelt and prayed for guidance. "My Lord, please grant me safely out of your furnace so that I may raise my family." When she opened her eyes, she spotted a shawl on the sofa. She wrapped it around herself and ran out the front door. She didn't see her husband, but she saw some of her children. She went over to a group of them and asked the small woman who was their maid, Betty, "Do you know if all of them got out all right?" Betty said, "I don't know about John, but the rest have gotten out just fine. I don't think that any of them are hurt seriously, just a few minor burns and scrapes." Susannah said, "Thank the Lord for his graciousness. We have to figure out how to get John out. I tried to go through the attic, but it was impossible to reach him." Betty said, "Oh no, I thought we gotten all of them out." Just then her frantic husband appeared and said, "Have you seen my wife? She was inside. I tried to get in to save her, but the flames beat me back." Susannah said, "It's me, Samuel. Don't you recognize me?" The rector examined his wife. "Why, it is you. You are covered head to foot in ashes. I never would have recognized you like you are." "Were you getting John? The rest of the children are all right." Susannah said, "I tried to, but the flames were too much for me." A neighbor yelled at them, "Your boy is at the front of the house at a window." A couple ran to the front of the house. The 5-year-old John was screaming. His face is covered in streaks of ashes. He stretched his hand out to where no one could possibly reach him. Susannah said, "You must get on top of each other's shoulders to reach the boy." The neighbors looked at one another for a second, but then they consented, and one by one they climbed on top of Samuel's shoulders and made a human ladder. When all the men had gotten on, they were still about 5 feet short. Susannah shouted, "You have to jump, John. Do it now." John jumped up but was not able to get his body through the window. His head disappeared for a few seconds, and then he looked through the window again. This time he appeared taller. His legs stuck through the window, and instead of jumping like he intended, he fell, but was caught by the neighbor on top. The human chain wavered for a few seconds, but then it stabilized. Then the roof caved in. If John had stayed in the attic for a few seconds more, he would have been killed. The neighbors passed him down, and the ladder dissipated. Susannah inspected her child and determined him to be free of serious injuries. She hugged him and then said, "You are truly a brand plucked from the fire." Then she took his hand and went to his father, who hugged him. John said, "I had to push a chest over to stand on to jump out of the window." Susannah said, "John, that was very smart of you." Then she turned to Samuel. "I tried to save your books, but I couldn't. They were worth so much money, I can't believe that our house and the books are gone." Samuel said, "Now that you and all the children are preserved." For a moment he was too choked up to speak. He turned and addressed those who had helped him save John. "Come, neighbors, let us kneel down. Let us give thanks to God. He has given me all of my 8 children. Let the house go. Though I have no possessions, I am rich enough."